The following events are based on a true story. Names and details have been altered to protect the identities of those involved, but the horror remains untouched. Watch at your own risk. Story 1. Tribeca, Manhattan, New York City. Don't care if no one believes me. I've stopped trying to explain things I don't understand, things I shouldn't understand. But last night, something happened that clawed open the part of me I'd buried for years. And if I don't write it down, I'm afraid I'll forget again. Just like before, it started with a gig. A weird one, sure, but nothing compared to the crap I'd already been through growing up in a house where things scratched inside the walls and mirrors didn't always reflect the room. I'm a sophomore at NYU, broke as hell, and found the job on a bulletin board at a cafe on Mercer. Quiet, clean presence needed, cash, no questions. I called the number and met the guy the next evening at a penthouse on Franklin Street in Tribeca. Floor-to-ceiling windows, pristine marble, walls so white it felt like standing in a dentist's memory. And clocks, dozens of them. All ticking, but not a single one showed the right time. He didn't say much. In fact, he never really looked. At me, not directly. Just gestured for me to sit in this impossibly uncomfortable chair facing the far wall, where the largest clock hung like a judge. No talking. Ever, he said the first night, his voice low and papery, like it had been folded in a drawer for too long. Then he handed me a wad of cash that smelled faintly of mothballs and something sour. I figured it was a sugar daddy thing, or maybe some fetish I wasn't supposed to ask about. I didn't care. I needed rent. At first it was easy. I'd just sit there for an hour, sometimes two, while he paced or stared out the window or disappeared into another room. Occasionally he'd murmur to himself, but never loud enough for me to hear the words. The clocks ticked in this strange, uncoordinated rhythm, as if each was keeping time in a different reality. After a few weeks, I noticed something odd in the bathroom mirror. My face, it looked tired, aged, more than it should have after a couple all-nighters. My eyes were duller, the shadows beneath them too deep, too permanent. But when I touched my face, it still felt the same. By the third week, I started checking the clocks before and after each visit. Not one of them ever moved while I was there. I'd glance at the one above the kitchen doorway, 3:17. An hour later, still 3:17. But the second I left and waited by the elevator, I'd hear a soft click, 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 like dozens of gears spinning back to life. Once I stepped back in to double check, and every single clock had reset to a new time. Still wrong, but different. I told myself it was just some art piece or psychological experiment. Rich people are weird. I tried to ignore the part of me that remembered other wrong clocks years ago, back when the mirror in my childhood bedroom started showing people who weren't me. Then came the night I arrived 10 minutes early. I hadn't meant to. Subway ran fast for once. I figured I'd just text and say I was downstairs, but curiosity got the better of me. The door was already ajar. That was the first red flag. The second was the silence. No ticking. Just a thick, muffled nothing, like sound itself had stepped out of the room. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The lights were dimmer than usual. The air felt charged, like before a storm. That's when I heard it, the whispering. He was kneeling in front of the grandfather clock in the corner, one hand pressed flat against the glass, the other tracing something into the floor with a fingertip. It looked like ash, or maybe dried blood. I didn't want to get close enough to check. His back was to me, but his head was tilted at a grotesque angle, like he was trying to listen with his spine. The words he whispered didn't sound human. They scraped across my brain in a way that made me nauseous. It wasn't a language I recognized, more like wet syllables stitched together wrong. And the clocks, they weren't ticking, but vibrating, as if trying to hum along. Then the wall started to bleed. I'm not exaggerating. At first it looked like condensation, but the smell hit me. Iron, rot, old pennies and raw meat left in the sun. Thin rivulets leaked down the pristine white, walls branching out in crooked veins. He didn't even flinch, just kept whispering. I backed up slowly, careful not to make a sound, but the hardwood groaned beneath my heel and his head snapped around. Not turned, snapped. His face was wrong, mouth too wide, eyes too still. But the worst part was what he said next. He didn't yell. He just whispered even softer, "You weren't supposed to see this yet." I ran. Didn't wait for the elevator. Just bolted down 30 flights of stairs, lungs burning, calves screaming, that voice echoing in my skull like a parasite. I didn't stop until I hit the sidewalk, where everything felt too bright, too loud. The streetlights buzzed like they were angry at me. I looked at my reflection in a storefront window and nearly vomited. I looked 20 years older. My skin was pale and sagging, hair thinner, eyes sunken deep like I hadn't slept in weeks. But when I touched my face, it still felt like mine. Smooth, young, wrong. I haven't gone back since. I blocked his number, switched dorms. I even called in a noise complaint to the building just to see if someone else might notice something. Nothing. No record of a tenant in that penthouse. No one on the lease. The doorman I remembered, older guy, thick glasses, isn't there anymore. They say he retired 6 months ago. I checked the cafe where I found the ad. That bulletin board? Gone. Staff said they never had one. Every trace of how I got into that place has vanished, except the money. Still in my desk drawer, still smelling like sour metal and mildew. I haven't spent a dime. I tried to tell a friend once, just one. He laughed, said I was probably high, said maybe. I dreamed it. But that night he texted me at 3:17 a.m. Just a photo. Blurry, dark, but I recognized it. My reflection in the mirror behind him. Older, watching him sleep. I called and called, but he didn't answer. The next morning his phone was disconnected. His dorm was empty. School says he dropped out. No one else even remembers him being in our program. Like he was edited out of reality. I've started taping black cloth over my mirrors. It doesn't help much. I still hear ticking when the room goes quiet. So why am I writing this now? Because last night I woke up and every clock in my room said 3:17. None of them was set. I don't even own most of them. They were just there, on shelves, on the floor, in the fridge, all ticking, but none in sync. I think I left the door open a crack when I came in. I think something followed me. And I think it's waiting. If this post disappears or if I do, don't come looking for me. Just listen for the clocks. If they stop ticking all at once, run. Story 2. Wicker Park, Chicago, Illinois. I've babysat Airbnbs, house sat for paranoid millionaires, even watched a guy's koi fish for a week. But this gig was different. No feeding dogs, no taking out trash. The guy just wanted someone in the house while he slept. Non-contact presence, he called it. I'd never heard that phrase outside of restraining orders. He said it like it was some spiritual service. $5,000 for 3 nights. All I had to do was be there, not even in the same room. Stay awake, walk around if I wanted. Just be present. Wicker Park, classic brownstone, the kind that looks like it was built before electricity was invented. Inside, it was modern, except weirdly sterile. No photos, no books. The fridge was full, but of identical water bottles lined up like soldiers. He showed me his bedroom, pointed at a tiny bell on the nightstand. If you hear it ring, just come to the door and say something. Don't enter, don't knock, just speak. His voice was brittle and he wouldn't meet my eyes. I almost laughed. But $5,000 is $5,000. The first night, the house moaned like it had lungs, not the usual creaks you expect from old wood. These sounded deeper, drawn-out groans like pressure shifting under the floorboards. I kept checking the thermostat, thinking maybe it was the heating system, but it was silent. The mirrors were what really threw me off, though. There were 3 in the hallway, old and tall, with ornate black frames. When I passed by, I always saw a flicker, like someone else turning the corner behind me. Once, I swear, I saw 2 of me, not reflected. A second me, standing just behind my shoulder, not moving. There were also doors that didn't open. I counted. 5 bedrooms when I first arrived, but 2 of them were locked. The kind of lock you don't pick with a credit card, keyhole and deadbolt. One had a strip of red wax at the seam, cracked like it had been sealed a long time ago. I leaned in once, just curious, and I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't a sound exactly, it was more like a breath drawn in right against my ear, like the door exhaled when I got too close. I laughed it off, told myself it was just airflow or maybe some old ventilation shaft, but I stopped leaning in after that. The second night, the bell rang at 2:13 a.m. I was in the kitchen scrolling through my phone, trying not to fall asleep. The chime was sharp, metallic, too crisp for something so small. I jumped, spilled water on the counter. I waited a second, expecting it to ring again, but it didn't. I walked to his bedroom door and said, "Hey, everything okay?" No response. I tried again, louder. Still nothing. I thought about opening the door just to peek, but I remembered his exact words. "Don't enter, don't knock." I stood there until the silence started to feel heavy in my chest. Then I walked away. That's when I noticed the mirrors again. This time there were 3 of me, one standing just behind my left shoulder, one just behind my right. Perfect reflections until one of them blinked while I didn't. I froze. Then all 3 versions of me smiled at once. That was enough. I covered the mirrors with spare sheets from the linen closet. I told myself I was just tired. Lack of sleep does weird things to the brain. Hallucinations, tricks of the eye. I've seen worse on edible overdoses, but still, I left every light on that night. By the 3rd night, I was jumpy enough to flinch at my own reflection. I didn't eat, didn't sit still. I just paced the hallways like some underpaid ghost, checking that the bedroom door was closed, that the bell hadn't moved. At one point, I thought I heard footsteps upstairs, even though I was certain no one else was in the house. When I looked, nothing. But when I came back down, one of the locked doors was ajar, just a crack like someone had tried to close it and changed their mind halfway. I should have left. I know that. But when 5 grand's on the line, your brain makes all kinds of excuses. Maybe I sleepwalked. Maybe the client got up and I didn't notice. Maybe old houses do weird things. That night, I curled up on the couch facing the hallway. I didn't plan to sleep, but I must have dozed off at some point because I woke up freezing, not just cold freezing, the kind of cold that feels wet like you're underwater. And then I realized I wasn't on the couch anymore. I was in one of the locked rooms. The air was thick, like it hadn't been breathed in years. The walls were lined with mirrors, tall, warped things that bent the light wrong. There was no door behind me, just smooth, uninterrupted wall. I spun in place, heart hammering, palms slick with sweat. Every time I moved, my reflections didn't sync up. Some turned slower. One stood completely still, and in the farthest mirror, across the room, something else was there. Not a reflection. A figure. It was smiling. Not grinning, smiling. Controlled. Deliberate. It looked human at first, but the more I stared, the more I saw the flaws. The skin was too tight across the face. The eyes didn't blink. The head tilted slightly, like a doll balanced on a shelf that no one dared touch. I screamed, or I think I did. The room didn't echo. The sound just stopped as soon as it left my throat, like the walls had swallowed it. I ran to where the door should have been, slamming my fists into the wall. Nothing gave. I couldn't even hear the impact. When I turned back around, the figure was closer. Not by much, maybe a step. But it hadn't moved, I'm sure of that. It was like the mirror had zoomed in while everything else stayed still. I backed away, pressing my spine to the wall, and every mirror reflected something slightly different now. One showed me screaming. One showed me curled on the floor. One was empty. I don't remember how long I stayed like that, but at some point, I blinked, and I was back on the couch. Morning light bleeding in through the curtains. My phone was dead. The bedroom door was wide open. The bell was gone. I didn't take the money. I didn't speak to the client. I just left. I walked out and didn't even close the door behind me. I don't know how I got out of that room, or if I ever really did. Sometimes when I pass a mirror in my apartment, I think I catch a glimpse of that face again, just for a second, smiling. I've thrown out 3 mirrors already. The 4th one won't go. Every time I try to move it, I lose hours. So I'm posting this here because I need to know, has anyone ever taken a job like this in Chicago? Wicker Park? If you've seen him, or it, please tell me I'm not the only one. Story 3, Pine Street, Financial District, San Francisco. I never minded working the late hours. The city looked cleaner at night, emptier, like it was trying to forget what it had done during the day. That Tuesday, Pine Street felt unusually quiet, even for after midnight. The only sound was my own footsteps echoing off the buildings until I reached his place. From the outside, it looked like nothing. No windows, no lights, just a matte black door embedded in a concrete shell between two glass towers. But the address was right. I rang once and the door opened on its own. Inside, the silence hit like pressure in my ears. Everything was soft, surfaces, lighting, even the air. It smelled faintly of ozone and something medicinal. The hallway was long and too narrow, padded like a recording booth. I'd only taken 3 steps in before I noticed the first camera. It was old, early 2000s maybe, mini DV. Then another, and another, all pointed inward. There must have been dozens mounted to the walls and ceiling, all aimed at a single black leather chair in the center of the room ahead. He was already there, waiting. He didn't say a word. He gestured for me to sit on the matching chair across from him. It was exactly 6 feet away, symmetrical. I noticed then, every object in the room had a twin. 2 chairs, 2 lamps, 2 glass tumblers filled with ice water, a row of analog clocks on the far wall, all ticking softly in sync but showing different time zones. I reached for the water, but he shook his head. No talking, no drinking, just sit, just look, that's what he wanted. I thought about leaving, but he was already watching me through the lens of a handheld camcorder, red light blinking. That first night, nothing happened, at least nothing out of the ordinary for this line of work. I stayed the hour. We didn't touch, didn't speak, and then he stood and walked out without acknowledging me. A moment later, the hallway lights guided me back to the front door, which unlocked by itself. The next morning, I woke up feeling foggy, like I'd been sedated, but I hadn't been. I checked my phone, no missed calls, no messages, except, for one, from an unknown number. Just an emoji of a video camera and a period. I thought maybe it was some rich guy's weird kink. I should have walked away then. The second visit was almost identical. Same path through the padded hallway, same eerie hush, same man waiting with his outdated camcorder. But this time, as I sat down, one of the cameras on the wall turned, mechanically. Just a slow tilt downward, clicking softly as it refocused on me. I flinched. He didn't react. I tried to speak, to ask what the hell was going on, but he raised a single finger to his lips. Silence. He hit record. The red light blinked again. That time, I stayed longer. I don't know how much longer. My phone said 2 hours had passed when I left, but I swear it felt like 20 minutes. That night I had the dream, or I thought it was a dream. I was walking down Pine Street, just like before, but everything was reversed. The buildings leaned inward like they were watching me, and I saw myself. Me, standing across the street, holding a camcorder, taping my own steps. When I woke up, my legs were sore and there was grime under my nails, like I'd been walking all night. I checked the soles of my shoes. Wet. And the inside of my pockets smelled faintly of disinfectant, the same sterile scent from the hallway. I didn't remember going back, but something told me I had. By the third visit, something inside me had changed. I was more alert, paranoid even, but not in the way you'd expect. It wasn't fear. It was disorientation, like pieces of me were getting misplaced. He was already filming when I arrived, his camcorder fixed on the door as I walked in. But when I looked up at the wall of screens, yes, there were monitors now stacked floor to ceiling, I saw footage playing that I didn't remember being recorded. Me sitting in the chair, me walking in, me talking, whispering something into the camcorder. Over and over, the same hushed sentence, "I'm still inside." I confronted him, stood up, crossed the room, and grabbed his wrist. But he didn't resist. He only smiled, slow and tired, like someone who'd seen this 100 times. I asked what this was, what he was doing to me. His lips didn't move, but a screen behind him flickered and displayed a time-stamped video. It showed me arriving 5 nights ago. I walked through the door, nodded, sat down, and then nothing. The feed just looped. No exit, no goodbye. Just static at the end. I backed away, heart pounding so hard it drowned out the silence. The video title in the corner said, "First Entry." I stopped going after that, blocked the number, ignored the anonymous texts. For 2 days, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw myself behind glass, mouthing things I couldn't hear. The footage from the screens looped in my head, always with that same timestamp. 02:17:46 a.m. I even visited a doctor, convinced I was losing time or hallucinating. She said I was suffering from stress-related dissociation. I nodded, but I didn't believe her, because that morning there was a flash drive in my mailbox, no label, no envelope, just metal, cold and familiar. I shouldn't have plugged it in. The file opened with static, then stabilized. A single shot the front door of his home from the inside. I saw myself walk in, carrying my phone, checking the time. The footage didn't skip, no edits, no cuts. Just me wandering down the hallway, turning to face a camera and speaking softly. If you're watching this, you didn't make it out. I laughed, out loud, nervous, but the video kept going. 5 minutes passed. 10. I never left. I just stopped appearing. The frame stayed empty. Then, in the final seconds, something stepped into view. It was wearing my clothes. I haven't left my apartment in 4 days. Every time I pass a mirror, I brace myself. I keep checking my windows, even though I live on the 12th floor, because sometimes I hear that faint whirring sound like an old tape rewinding. Last night I found my phone in the freezer. The lock screen had changed to that same timestamp, 02:17:46 a.m. I never set that. I never touched it. I've unplugged everything, covered the webcams, but there's always this hum now in the walls, in the air, like something's still recording, like I'm already in the footage and just haven't realized it yet. If you've seen me, on the street, in a store, even just in passing, ask yourself, something. Did I blink? Did I speak? Did I look right? Because I'm not sure I'd recognize myself anymore. Maybe I left Pine Street. Maybe I didn't. Maybe some part of me is still sitting in that padded chair, whispering into the lens. And if this story ends here, that means the flash drive worked. It found someone new, so if your screen goes black in a second, and you see your own face staring back at you, don't look away, it already knows you're watching. Story 4. South Beach, Miami, Florida. I know what you're thinking. Miami, yachts, celebrities. Boo-hoo, poor me. But listen, just because a gig sounds glamorous doesn't mean it's not the beginning of a damn nightmare. I've been in this line of work long enough to know when something's off. And let me tell you, nothing about that. Boat felt right. Not the invite, not the silence from the other girls, and definitely not the way the crew kept avoiding eye contact. Still, money talks. And this one promised a lot of it. The yacht was docked just off South Beach, glittering like a drug dealer's fever dream. Huge, sleek, and wrong. I couldn't explain it at first, just a gut thing. Like when you enter a room and instantly forget what you came for. There were no names on the hull, no registration numbers, just a black exterior that seemed to absorb the sunlight, and a client whose assistant only referred to him as Mr. Glass. I thought that was a joke. I joked back. Nobody laughed. They just ushered me on board like I'd already agreed to something I didn't understand. Inside, the yacht was dead silent. No music, no chatter, not even the low hum of engines. Just that sterile, padded silence you only get in expensive hotels and funeral homes. The walls were white, but not clean white. They had this grayish tint, like they'd been scrubbed too many times or were hiding something beneath the paint. I followed one of the crew, a tall guy with mirrored sunglasses and a Bluetooth earpiece he clearly wasn't using, through a hallway that curved when it shouldn't have. That's the first moment I thought this place is bigger on the inside. But again, sarcasm as a defense mechanism, I muttered, "What is this, a TARDIS?" He didn't smile, he didn't even blink. They brought me to a lounge area, all marble and chrome, and there he was, Mr. Glass, sitting in shadow despite the floor-to-ceiling windows. I swear the light just didn't touch his face. I tried to be professional, made a quip about needing sunglasses indoors, but he only tilted his head slightly and said, "You've been here before." That froze me. Not creeped out, not yet, just confused. I told him, "Nope, first time," unless I had a rich twin with better taste. He smiled, but only with his mouth. "This is where we met," he said again, as if reminding me. I started to feel a weird pressure in my ears, like you do on a plane descending too fast. I chalked it up to nerves. After that, things got glitchy. I was led to a guest room to freshen up, but when I opened the door, my stomach dropped. It was my bedroom. Not just a similar layout, the same exact posters, the burn mark on the desk from an old straightener, the chipped corner of my mirror where I dropped it 2 months ago. Even the clothes in the hamper were mine. I stood there, frozen, thinking it had to be some kind of elaborate prank or a bad trip. Except I hadn't touched anything stronger than a mimosa that morning. I backed out slowly and called to the crew guy, but he was gone. No footsteps, no reply, just that low ambient hum like the yacht itself was breathing. I went down a hallway to try and retrace my steps, but it didn't lead back to the lounge. It led to another copy of my room. Same mess, same smell, that mix of lavender spray and half-washed makeup brushes. I checked the drawers. My journals were there, pages torn in the same places I remembered. I even checked for the gum I'd stuck under the nightstand last winter during a lazy Zoom call. It was there, perfectly fossilized. I don't remember how long I stood there, just staring at it like it was some kind of anchor to reality. But when I finally turned around, the hallway behind me was gone, just a solid wall, like the yacht had swallowed it. I tried using my phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no apps working except GPS. And that's when things went from weird to batshit insane. The map didn't show water, it showed sand. Endless cracked desert stretching in every direction, like I was standing in the middle of Arizona instead of floating off the coast of Miami. I refreshed the screen. Same result. I zoomed in and saw a pin labeled home right where I was standing. Not the yacht, home. I laughed, mostly because I didn't know what else to do. And that's when Mr. Glass's voice came through the intercom, like he was whispering directly into my skull. "You always get lost here." I started running. Not walking, not searching, running. Through hallway after hallway, each one identical, sterile, and slightly wrong in proportions. Doors kept appearing where there hadn't been any. And every time I opened one, it was either my bedroom again or a dead-end wall. At some point, I tried smashing a window with a lamp, just one of the absurdly expensive crystal ones, and the glass bent like rubber. No sound, no crack, just bounce. My panic finally broke through my sarcasm. I screamed, not some cute horror movie shriek, full lungs, raw throat. Nothing answered, but the lights flickered in response, like the yacht was listening. Maybe it always had been. At some point, I don't know when, time felt elastic, I found a room that wasn't my bedroom. It was a dining hall, long and dimly lit, with one massive table stretching into shadows. Seated all along it were people dressed like they were at some high-end gala, frozen in place. I thought they were mannequins until one of them blinked. Then another turned their head toward me, slowly, like their necks had rusted. Their faces were wrong, familiar. I saw a girl I used to dance with, a bartender from a club I barely remembered, my high school math teacher. They all smiled at once, and it was the same exact smile, duplicated down the table like a copy-paste glitch in a video game. I backed away and slammed the door, turned and ran straight into Mr. Glass. This time, he wasn't in shadow, but I still couldn't see his face. It was like my eyes refused to focus on it, like trying to remember a dream as it slips away. He put a hand on my shoulder, cold, dry, not quite human, and said, "We don't have to keep doing this. You can stay." This time, that phrase "this time" cracked something open in my brain, like this had happened before. Like I'd been here before, and suddenly I wasn't sure if I'd ever really left. He leaned in, too close, and whispered, "This is where we met." And this time, I believed him. I don't remember how I got back to the dock. 1 second I was in that impossible hallway, and the next I was standing on the beach, barefoot and shivering, my clothes soaked with salt water I couldn't remember swimming through. The yacht was gone, not just out to sea, gone like it had never existed. No footprints, no witnesses, just the sound of waves and traffic and my own breathing, which wouldn't slow down. I opened my phone again. GPS showed my location in the middle of the Sonoran Desert. The pin still said home. I deleted the app, reinstalled it. Same result. I haven't used location services since. Every night since I've dreamed of that yacht, of endless doors and mirrored smiles. And sometimes, not every night, but often enough, I wake up to find my bedroom just slightly wrong. My poster's in the wrong place, a toothbrush I don't remember buying. The smell of salt in the air, even though I live 6 miles inland now, and sometimes, when I turn over, I see a man sitting in the corner, not moving, not blinking, just watching me from the shadows. I can't see his face, I don't want to. But last night he said something, clear as day. You made it back. Let's try again. Story 5, The Strip, Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm not saying I'm better than the other guys who work the Strip, but I never took gigs that didn't come through a vetted booker, until last week. Look, money talks. And when a guy in a Versace suit hands you an envelope so thick it practically moans, you stop asking questions. He said he was an aesthetic historian, which I figured was just highbrow talk for a collector of weird porn. The job, private performance, one night only, in a mansion just off Desert Inn Road. No touching, just a reenactment of a party. I supposedly attended in October 2022, only I don't remember that night at all. The guy, Mr. J, had notes, a printed itinerary, costume references, even dialogue. It was all disturbingly specific, like I'd done this scene before. He handed me a vintage tux, velvet lapels and all, and said, "You wore this when you made her smile." Her, there, was no her listed, just the name of a cocktail I'd never heard of and the words, "Please arrive by 9:17 p.m. sharp." That exact time, not 9:15, not 9:30, 9:17. I should have bailed right then, but hey, rent's due. The mansion looked like it had been built as a dare, 3 stories of glass and marble, perched arrogantly against the neon horizon. I half expected a camera crew to jump out yelling something about a prank show. Inside it was all hush and hush, low lights, floors that swallowed footsteps, and this weird artificial scent like cinnamon and cleaning alcohol. Mr. J led me down, a hall lined with velvet ropes and framed photos, not of celebrities, of moments. Each one was labeled like a museum exhibit. First kiss, August 1973. Laughter. Unnamed guest, room 4C. Who frames emotions? Then we passed the statues. At first I thought they were actors frozen in place, like one of those street performers who doesn't blink. But no one moved. They were wax, or silicone maybe, but disturbingly lifelike. A guy leaning against a bar, mid-laugh. A woman halfway through a dance move, heel lifted. Their eyes weren't glass, they were real. Not biologically, obviously, but they had that shine, that wet uncertainty you only see in people right before they say something awkward. Preserving moments, Mr. J said over his shoulder, as if that explained anything. Each figure remembers joy. I didn't reply. I didn't want to sound like I was about to throw up. The room I was assigned looked like a set from a mid-century movie. Dim orange lighting, crushed velvet furniture, and mirrors, so many mirrors, angled in weird, disorienting ways. There was even a phonograph in the corner, already spinning something low and jazzy. The suit they gave me was waiting on the bed, laid out like it belonged to someone important. I put it on. Fit like a glove, which should have comforted me, but instead made my skin crawl. I don't remember being measured. I don't remember ever wearing anything that felt so familiar. At exactly 9:17 p.m., the lights dimmed further and the music changed. No announcement, no cue, just that quiet shift, like the house itself was following a script. I walked into the hallway and instinctively turned left, even though no one told me where to go. I just knew. The steps felt rehearsed, like muscle memory I'd never earned. As I approached a gold-trimmed parlor, I caught my reflection in one of the tall wall mirrors, and for a second I swear I saw myself already inside the room laughing. Then it blinked out, just a trick of the light. Had to be. There was no one else in the parlor, just more statues. One seated at a piano, fingers frozen in a chord, another perched on the edge of a chaise lounge, a cigarette eternally halfway to her lips. Their clothes were glamorous, timeless, and looked a little too clean, like they'd been dressed yesterday. I tried to laugh it off. Vegas has always been one big wax museum, I muttered just to hear my own voice, but it didn't echo right. The sound felt swallowed, like the air itself didn't want me speaking. Then I saw him. Tucked in the far corner behind a half-drawn curtain was a statue that stopped me cold. Same jawline, same scar above the right eyebrow, from when I wiped out on my skateboard in middle school. Same goddamn birthmark near the neck. He was frozen in terror, arms raised like he was warding something off, mouth open in a silent scream. In his hand, a small white card. I stepped closer. My legs felt wrong, rubbery, unsteady. The card had one line typed neatly across it. October 14th, 9:17 p.m. That was tomorrow's date. I backed away so fast I knocked over a tray stand and the crash echoed like gunfire. Still, no one came, no footsteps, no voices, just that lazy jazz music floating from the walls like it didn't care I was unraveling. I looked at the statue again, my statue, and this time I noticed something worse. His pupils were slightly dilated, not painted, not molded, reactive. That thing had once seen something, maybe still was. I shouted for Mr. J, but all I heard was a low hum, almost like a generator struggling in the walls. Panicked, I ran down the hall trying to retrace my steps, but the layout had changed. Doors were where walls had been, mirrors reflected angles that didn't match the room, and each new corner revealed more statues, more frozen figures posed, mid-expression, some smiling, some blank, some screaming. My name was whispered once, soft, almost tender, from a direction I couldn't place. And then I saw it. Another card. This one stuck to the mirror in what had been the entryway. Same date, but a new time. Now. I don't remember falling. 1 second I was reading the card, and the next I was on the floor with something thick and sticky clinging to my back like hot wax but heavier. The lights flickered, and in their rhythm I saw flashes. My own face staring back from different angles, twisted in different emotions. Joy, lust, terror, and always, always, that same suit. I wasn't reliving a memory. I was being edited into one, built like the others, preserved. The phonograph needle scratched to a stop and the silence felt final. I woke up in my own bed this morning. The suit's gone. So is my phone. No messages, no missed calls, just a faint cinnamon smell that won't leave my skin and a small white card tucked beneath my pillow. Thank you for the moment. I want to believe I had a breakdown, a bad trip. Maybe I fell asleep watching something bizarre, but my mirror's acting strange, off by half a second, like my reflection is remembering before I do. If you live in Vegas and someone offers you a chance to be remembered forever, don't answer. And if you've already been to that mansion, I need to know I'm not the only one. Please, tell me what you saw.